Guys, we're gonna give you the result and our thoughts on this fight, but first, make sure to subscribe to this channel.
And for the heavyweight championship, it was Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And before the fight, you had some thoughts on Ngannou. What were you saying about him?
He's like a wild animal.
Like a big scary monster,
Yeah.
Which, I mean, right now he's currently, I think, considered the scariest guy in all of the UFC. He was promoted as this scary monster, and I believe the champion, Stipe Miocic, was actually the underdog, and Miocic was going for a record because no one in the history of the UFC has defended the heavyweight championship more than twice, and this was if Stipe would win this would be his third, setting a UFC record for most title defenses for a heavyweight champion. But he had a tall task to face, and if he can't do that, I don't think we can blame him. Something that's really interesting though, someone that views my other channel said to me one time that they noticed that in college, I guess they found it online, maybe the results, they said, I saw that you wrestled against Stipe Miocic, the heavyweight champion of the UFC. Now, I don't remember that happening. I don't know if I won or lost that match. And it's kind of weird because people think I'm a big guy, but I look at Miocic and I think this guy's huge. So if I wrestled him, it must have been at 197 when I wasn't really cutting much weight. But I look at him and he's like a huge guy. They list him at 6'4". I think he weighs in around 240. But a very large man, but he was fighting an even larger man, an even scarier man in Francis Ngannou.
Scary looking,
who
monster looking man.
Who is from an S-hole country. I didn't say that. The President of the United States say that. Don't kill the messenger. But apparently he's from he's from Africa. But we don't really have a lot of video on him because he knocks everyone out right away, and guys that do that, that's scary. He's of course very famous for his epic knockout against Alistair Overeem. He's knocked out Andrei Arlovsky, another former UFC champion. The thing about those guys are they have glass jaws. However, I mean, this guy's scary. I mean, anyone that fights at heavyweight, they're scary because they can just turn your lights off, and anytime you fight someone, of course, that can end the fight in one punch is scary. So of course you got to feel like the obvious game plan for Miocic would be to wrestle him, tire him out, bring him into the later rounds, because these guys, you got to weather the storm against them. Those are the obvious game plans. And round one starts, it's a lot like in the previous fight, the Cormier fight against Ozamar. It's not looking real good for the champion. The other guy's coming out, doing his thing, landing, stunning. Miocic was stunned definitely in the first round. But then towards the end of the first round, you could see Ngannou slow down, and Stipe started to take over. And what happened in the rest of the fight from there on out, it was just more of the same. Total domination by Miocic of just wearing him out. I think that Miocic really should have finished the fight, and he could have finished the fight. The problem was he was very tired himself, but Ngannou ended up losing the fight. Most people thought that this fight could be over in 30 seconds. There was a real risk of that happening. Not many people thought it would have went all 5 rounds, but it went all 5 rounds. And I think the stat that they showed for round 4, Ngannou landed 0 strikes in round 4. 0 strikes. But
getting tired.
Miocic was dominant. I would have liked to have seen him finish the fight. He could have finished the fight, but that's easier said than done when you're that tired yourself. Because the thing is, at one point Rogan said, well, Ngannou hasn't been training long, only for 5 years, and there's only so much that you can learn in 5 years. But the problem wasn't what he knows or his abilities or anything like that. His problem was he had no gas in the tank. If you're tired out, it doesn't matter what your skills are, it doesn't matter how strong and how fast you are, because when you're tired, that stuff all goes out the window, and that's exactly what happened. So what do you think, Imabel?
Well, I had fun watching the fight, and even though Ngannou looks like a monster, Miocic is still the champion.
Yeah, sometimes when you're that big and have that large of muscles, it can definitely work against you when you're going into the endurance rounds, because MMA, of course, is such an endurance sport. It's a real problem when you only have the ability to fight for 5 minutes, but the fight is scheduled for 25 minutes. That's a real problem. So you'd better finish early, which he typically does. And it's always scary to face someone like that. But Ngannou, he definitely had his moments. I thought he looked pretty good, especially if you take into account how inexperienced he was. At one point, Miocic, who's currently the champion and now holds the record for most heavyweight title defenses, I remember early in his career when he was losing to guys. So this guy definitely could be back, and Ngannou's definitely going to be a scary opponent for whoever he fights next.
You know what? I would still want to watch Ngannou on his next fight because he's really a tough fighter, I would say.
Yeah, he's
like, just looking at him physically, he's like scary to fight. So
he's still going to be scary because he's still like one of those guys that's scary in the first round.
Yeah.
So anytime, you know, people aren't going to be lining up to fight him, and who knows, he could have a really great future after this. I definitely wouldn't come out. I thought he looked impressive, but man, he was tired. It's just Miocic needed to press the issue a little bit more, and he easily could have got that finish, but he was just a little too tired himself, which is understandable when you have guys that big putting out that much energy. They're just not going to have the endurance, but it was a couple great championship fights nonetheless, and I enjoyed at the same time the Bellator fights, especially the main event of Sonnen and Rampage.
Right.
So thanks guys, until next time, make sure you're subscribed, we'll have new videos for you soon.